In the grand, golden history of professional bodybuilding, there are champions who followed the traditional rules of the sport. And then there is Dorian Yates. To truly understand the massive monster that dominated the entire decade of the 90s, you have to travel back to the gray, industrial, and unforgiving streets of Birmingham, England. This wasn't the sun-drenched, celebrity-filled atmosphere of Gold's Gym in Venice Beach, California. There were no palm trees, no cameras, and no cheering fans here to motivate the athletes. There was only the haunting sound of cold rain hitting gray concrete and a young man lost in a world that didn't seem to have a single place for him. Dorian's legendary story doesn't start with a shiny chrome barbell or a fitness magazine. It starts with a life-changing, dangerous mistake. After a night of youthful rebellion and trouble, Dorian found himself behind bars in a youth detention center. It was a brutal, lonely crossroads. He could have let the cold walls of the prison system swallow him whole, but instead, he discovered something deep inside his soul that most men never find. He was stronger than everyone else around him, not just physically, but mentally. He realized that while he couldn't control the chaotic world outside, he could master the heavy iron inside the gym. The weight didn't care about his criminal record or his past. It only responded to sheer, brutal, and honest effort. When he was finally released, he didn't head for the neon lights of the local clubs. He headed straight for the basement. Temple Gym was born, a legendary, damp dungeon located beneath the pavement of Birmingham. It was dark, it was humid, and for Dorian, it was absolutely perfect. Yates wasn't interested in the shallow lifestyle of a fitness celebrity. He didn't want the fame. He wanted to build the ultimate, most terrifying physique the world had ever seen. He began to study the complex science of muscle hypertrophy with the cold precision of a professional surgeon. He didn't just lift weights, he analyzed every single fiber. While the rest of the bodybuilding world was wasting time doing 20 high-volume sets of chest like Arnold, Dorian was looking for a more efficient, more violent way to grow. He understood that the human body doesn't want to change. You have to threaten its very survival to force it to adapt. This was the birth of the shadow. He stayed in England, hidden from the magazines, working in total haunting silence. He didn't post updates. He didn't talk trash. He just grew in the darkness. By the time he stepped onto the professional stage, the world didn't know what had hit them. He was thicker, grainier, and more focused than anything humanity had ever produced. He wasn't just another bodybuilder. He was a revolution in the making. The sport was about to change forever, and they never saw the shadow coming until it was far too late.
If the first chapter of this story was about the man, then this second chapter is about the brutal, uncompromising method behind the madness. To talk about Dorian Yates is to talk about the legendary blood and guts philosophy. This wasn't just a catchy, clever marketing title for a training video. It was a religious doctrine of extreme physical and mental pain. While his rivals in California were spending 3 hours in the gym every day, joking around and pumping up with high-volume sets, Dorian was doing the exact calculated opposite. He believed in the terrifying, raw power of high-intensity training. His philosophy was simple, logical, but absolutely terrifying for the average lifter. 1 set, total failure, absolute, uncompromising destruction. Dorian deeply understood that once you have successfully triggered the growth mechanism in the muscle, doing more work is not only useless, it's actually counterproductive for recovery. He often said it's like hitting a light switch. Once the light is on, you don't keep hitting the switch. But to make that one single set work, you had to go to a dark place most humans are deathly afraid of. You had to push your body past the point where the brain screams stop and the heart begs for mercy. A typical Dorian workout lasted only 45 minutes, but in that short window of time, he did more structural damage to his muscle fibers than most people do in an entire month of training. He relied on basic, heavy compound movements, rows, presses, and squats, but he performed them with a level of control that was haunting to watch. He wasn't throwing heavy weight around to feed a massive ego. He was a master scientist using a scalpel made of cold, hard, heavy iron. In the legendary Temple Gym archive footage, you can see the haunting intensity burning in his eyes. It was a cold, calculated rage. He would have his training partners scream at him, pushing him for that one extra forced rep, that one negative, that one singular moment where the muscle literally cannot move another inch. This was the glorious blood and guts era. He brought a blue-collar industrial work ethic to a sport that had become far too flashy and soft. Every single workout was recorded with precision in his logbook. Every extra pound added to the bar was a tactical victory in his war against the human limit. This scientific approach, combined with raw British grit, created a level of muscle density that the sport had never seen before. He wasn't just big, his muscles looked like they were carved out of solid Birmingham granite. He proved to the world that intensity will beat volume every single time.
By the time the early 90s arrived, the world of professional bodybuilding was still deeply rooted in the classic aesthetics of the Haney era. Fans were used to flowing lines, small waists, and beautiful vacuum poses. But behind the heavy, locked doors of Temple Gym, something entirely different was being forged in the dark. Dorian Yates wasn't just preparing to compete, he was preparing to destroy the very definition of a professional physique. In 1991, he stepped onto the Olympia stage for the very first time. He was massive, he was grainy, and he was undeniably dangerous. Although he took second place to the legendary Lee Haney that year, the message was loud and clear. A new, terrifying power had officially arrived from across the Atlantic. When Haney retired shortly after, the throne was left empty, and Dorian was more than ready to claim it as his own. In 1992, the shadow returned, and this time he wasn't just bigger, he was harder and more dense than anything the judges had ever witnessed in their entire careers. He brought a level of back development that defied human anatomy. His lats didn't just look like muscles, they looked like a massive, organic map of the world carved out of solid oak. The era of the mass monster had officially begun. The aesthetic beauty of the past was suddenly overshadowed by a raw, industrial power that felt almost prehistoric. It was a visual shock to the entire system of the sport. Dorian's dominance wasn't just about his overwhelming size, it was about the haunting graininess of his muscle. Most athletes looked soft under the bright stage lights, but Dorian looked like he was made of weathered stone. He didn't just beat his rivals, he made them look like children standing next to a giant. This was the moment the age of monsters was born. Every competitor in the world realized they would have to get significantly bigger just to stand in the same room as the man from Birmingham. Dorian had successfully shifted the entire paradigm of the sport, forcing everyone to follow his lead into a new, extreme territory of size. He didn't just win a trophy that night, he forever changed the biological requirements of becoming a champion.
Winning the Mr. Olympia title 6 times in a row is an achievement that sounds glorious on paper, but the reality for Dorian was a brutal war of attrition. To stay at the top of the mountain, he had to push his body far beyond its natural structural limits every single day. The blood and guts philosophy that made him a king was now beginning to exact a terrible price on his joints and connective tissues. While the world saw a titanium statue on stage, the man behind the tan was fighting a constant, exhausting battle with chronic pain and devastating injuries. Dorian knew that in order to keep growing, he had to keep lifting heavier, but the iron always has the final word in the end. By the mid-90s, the cracks in the armor began to show, but Dorian's mental toughness was far more powerful than his physical pain. In 1994, just weeks before the biggest show on Earth, he suffered a catastrophic tear in his left bicep. For any other human being, this would have been the end of the road, but the Shadow didn't know how to quit. He didn't complain, he didn't make excuses, and he didn't back down. He stepped onto that stage with a bruised, swollen arm and still managed to dominate the lineup through sheer force of will and superior muscle density. It was a display of grit that had never been seen before in the history of the sport. However, the human body is not an immortal machine, and the legendary intensity eventually took its final toll on his physique. Leading up to his final victory in 1997, Dorian suffered yet another massive injury, a torn tricep. He was literally falling apart at the seams, yet he still refused to let go of the crown. He won his 6th and final Sandow Trophy while practically being a one-armed man. It was a bittersweet victory that signaled the end of an era. He had reached the absolute peak of human development, but his body had finally paid the ultimate price for his 6 years of undisputed dominance. He walked away from the sport not because he was beaten, but because there was nothing left to prove and no more muscle left to tear. When Dorian Yates finally stepped off the professional stage for the very last time in 1997, the world of bodybuilding felt an immediate, chilling silence. He had won his 6th consecutive Sandow Trophy while literally falling apart at the seams, proving that his mind was far more powerful than his torn muscle fibers. But as the adrenaline of the final victory began to fade, the Shadow faced a new and terrifying reality. For over 15 years, his entire identity had been defined by the pursuit of extreme mass and industrial-level intensity. Now, with his body broken and his career finished, Dorian had to find out who he actually was without the weights. The transition from being a world-dominating mass monster to a retired athlete is a journey that destroys many men. But Dorian was always built differently. He didn't hang around the sport, desperately trying to stay relevant or chasing the ghost of his former glory. Instead, he retreated back into the shadows of Birmingham to heal his physical and mental wounds. The massive, grainy muscle that had once defied biology slowly began to recede, and Dorian started to focus on the long-term health he had sacrificed for his titles. It was a period of deep introspection and physical recovery that lasted for years. He realized that the same obsessive intensity he had used to build his back could now be used to rebuild his internal health. Dorian began to explore alternative therapies, changing his diet and moving away from the heavy, bone-crushing movements that had defined his youth. He didn't just walk away from the sport, he evolved past it. While other former champions struggled to find their way, Dorian leaned into the discipline he had cultivated in the basement of Temple Gym. He understood that the blood and guts era was a closed chapter, a beautiful but brutal war that had come to its natural end. He had already climbed the highest mountain in the world 6 times, and now he was looking for a different kind of peace. He proved that a true champion knows exactly when to put the sword down and walk away with his dignity fully intact.
Today, Dorian Yates looks almost nothing like the terrifying monster who haunted the dreams of his rivals in the 90s. If you see him now, he is lean, flexible, and focused on longevity through yoga and spiritual practices. But don't let the transformation fool you. The iron-willed spirit of the Shadow is still very much alive in everything he does. He has become a global ambassador for the sport, teaching the next generation that true success isn't just about the size of your muscles, but the strength of your internal character. His legacy in the sport of bodybuilding is absolutely undeniable and permanent. Dorian was the man who single-handedly brought the mass monster era to life, forcing the entire industry to rethink what was humanly possible. He proved that a blue-collar kid from a Birmingham basement could become a king through sheer focused intelligence and raw, unadulterated hard work. Every time you see a massive back on an Olympia stage today, you are seeing the direct influence of Dorian Yates. He set a standard for density and conditioning that many believe has never been equaled since he walked away in '97. As we look back on his 20-minute journey, we realize that Dorian's life is a masterclass in the power of focus. He showed us that you don't need the bright lights of California or a fancy training facility to change the world. You only need a plan, a logbook, and the willingness to suffer in silence until the work is done. He remains a living legend who proved that the Shadow was never hiding from the world. He was simply waiting for the world to catch up to him. So as you leave the gym today, ask yourself, are you training with the intensity of a champion, or are you just going through the motions? The iron is waiting, the weights are heavy, and the legacy of the Shadow is yours to follow.